In the heart of a green kingdom lived Princess Elisa, known for her infectious laugh and free spirit. His most prized possession was a glittering golden ball, a gift from his late grandfather, a wise and beloved king. Elisa vividly remembered the day she received her. Still small, her grandfather's wrinkled hands giving her the golden object, sealing an eternal bond of affection. The ball was not just a toy, it was a tangible link to the happy memories of his childhood, a symbol of love and protection. On sunny days, the castle garden became the scene of the princess's games. With the golden ball in her hand, she ran across the green grass, the soft breeze caressing her hair. The sparkling blue lake, surrounded by a dense and mysterious forest, framed the idyllic setting. Elisa threw the ball into the air, watching it shine against the clear sky, feeling pure, carefree joy. Every bounce, every movement of the ball echoed the joyful laughter that filled the garden, creating a symphony of childlike happiness. On this particular day, the sun was shining brighter, the breeze was gentler, a sign that the princess's carefree attitude was about to be interrupted. Playing near the shore of the lake, Elisa threw the golden ball with increasing enthusiasm. In a moment of distraction, perhaps lulled by the melody of the birds or by a distant thought, the ball slipped from his fingers. In slow motion, the princess saw the precious object roll towards the water, gaining speed with each moment. A silent scream escaped his lips as he witnessed the inevitable. The ball sank into the lake, sinking into the deep, dark waters. Desperation washed over Elisa like a cold wave, his eyes fixed on the spot where the ball had disappeared. The surface of the water now calm, with no trace of the golden glow. Desperate attempts to recover the ball followed. He stretched out his arms, leaned over the shore, but the depth of the lake was impenetrable. The once inviting dark water now seemed threatening, an abyss of mystery and danger. Tears welled up and ran down her delicate face as silent sobs shook her body. The loss of the Ballon d'Or was more than the loss of a toy. It was as if a piece of his past, of his most precious memories, had been swallowed by the murky depths of the lake. Sadness consumed her, a painful tightness in her chest, as frustration grew with each vain attempt to recover her lost treasure. Amidst the tears that filled her eyes, a movement in the water caught her attention. From the dark depths, a frog emerged. It wasn't just any frog. It had a peculiar greenish glow, and to Elisa's complete astonishment, it began to speak. His deep, hoarse voice broke the silence of the lake, causing the princess to shiver. Surprise and curiosity, mixed with initial fear. The frog, noticing the young woman's crying, offered her help. He proposed to recover the golden ball in exchange for a promise, to be taken to the castle, eat from its golden plate, and rest in its soft bed. Elisa hesitated. The idea of having a frog in his castle was repugnant to him, but the desire to get the ball back spoke louder. Deep within him, a voice whispered that the promise was empty. How could a frog get out of the lake and enter the castle? With a quick nod of his head, he sealed the deal, more to get rid of the uncomfortable situation than to believe in fulfilling those words. Almost instantly, the frog submerged into the murky waters, disappearing for a few moments. The princess held her breath, torn between hope and skepticism. Soon, the frog resurfaced, with the golden ball shining in its mouth. A laugh of relief and momentary joy escaped Elisa's lips as she received her treasure back. Without hesitation, he grabbed the ball and ran towards the castle, leaving behind the frog and the promise made on the shores of the lake. Back in the royal chambers, the smile returned to Elisa's face as she admired the golden ball. The adventure at the lake and the strange frog were already fading from his mind, eclipsed by the joy of recovering his treasure. Nonchalance filled the room until an unexpected sound echoed through the hallway. Knock, 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 knock. Slow and insistent knocks on the castle's sturdy wooden door disturbed the serenity. Elisa frowned, curious as to who it could be at this hour. The knocks were repeated, now a little louder, creating an atmosphere of slight apprehension. With faltering steps, the princess walked to the door and turned the handle. To his surprise and horror, there it was, the lake frog, sitting at the entrance as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A scream of fear escaped his lips. Fear took over his face as he faced the slimy green creature at his door. The frog, with its deep voice, reminded him of the promise made. Before Elisa could even protest, the king's imposing voice thundered from inside the castle. Intrigued by the commotion, the monarch appeared, questioning his daughter about the unusual visitor. Elisa, between confused and embarrassed explanations, revealed the agreement reached to recover the ball. The king, a man of his word and unwavering honor, looked at his daughter sternly and declared that promises, even those made to a frog, must be kept. With no other option, and under the firm gaze of her father, Elisa allowed the frog to enter the castle. The amphibian's presence caused an immediate buzz among the servants and courtiers. Curious glances and whispers filled the halls as the frog followed the princess, skipping across the stone floor. To Elisa's growing embarrassment, the frog would not leave her alone, following her every step, a sticky green shadow clinging to her royal heels. The situation reached a new level of discomfort during dinner. At the richly decorated table, while the princess tried to enjoy the food, the frog, unceremoniously, stood next to her, demanding a place at the table. To her disgust, Elisa watched the creature jump onto the chair next to her and, worse still, insist on eating from her golden plate. The appetite disappeared instantly. Watching the frog grab his food with its sticky tongue made his stomach turn. The horror reached its peak when, at the end of the night, the frog announced his desire to sleep in the princess's bed, as he had agreed. The idea was unbearable, repulsive. Elisa felt trapped in a web of her own recklessness. The promise, made lightly, now became a golden prison. With no apparent escape, and under the watchful eye of the king, the princess was reluctantly forced to consent, leading the frog to her chambers with a heavy heart and a premonition of terrible nights. The next 3 nights became a real test for Elisa's patience and stomach. Sharing a real bed with a toad was an unimaginable ordeal. Sleep became a rare luxury, disturbed by the slimy movements and occasional squawks of his unconventional bedmate. Nightmares filled her nights, depicting giant frogs and flooded castles, a reflection of the fear and repulsion that consumed her during the day. However, in the midst of the discomfort and apprehension, something unexpected began to happen. The frog, despite its grotesque appearance, seemed harmless. His large almond-shaped eyes, previously perceived as repulsive, now seemed to convey a strange sweetness. One night, a distant thunderclap made Elisa jump into bed. To his surprise, the frog advanced on him, not with the repulsive sliminess he had expected, but with an almost tender caution. Despite the fear still present, the princess began to observe the frog more closely. There was something different about him, something that escaped her initial understanding. A subtle curiosity began to germinate amidst the repulsion, a spark of intrigue piercing the darkness of prejudice. Resignation continued to predominate, but a small crack opened in his perception, allowing a new, albeit hesitant, perspective to begin to emerge. Script: The Frog Prince. On the 3rd night, as the exhausted princess tried to find a less uncomfortable position in bed, a strange warmth began to emanate from the creature next to her. A soft glow, almost imperceptible at first, began to radiate from the toad, growing in intensity with each moment. Elisa opened her eyes, surprised. A golden light bathed the room, pulsing rhythmically, with the frog as the epicenter. Soft sounds, like the tinkling of distant bells, echoed in the air, accompanying the increasing brightness. Fear turned to fascination as the princess watched, mesmerized, as the scene unfolded. The frog's slimy green skin began to change, the scales disappearing, giving way to a smooth, pale texture. The contours of the body changed, the rounded and clumsy shapes lengthened, defining themselves in elegant and noble lines. In a crescendo of light and sound, the transformation was complete. In place of the frog, a handsome prince now rested. Her hair was golden like the sun, her eyes blue like the summer sky, and a soft smile illuminated her perfect face. Elisa, with her mouth open, could hardly believe her eyes. A prince. The frog was a prince. In a brief glimpse of her mind, Elisa saw a fleeting image, a young prince, proud and happy, walking through a lush garden, when a shadowy figure dressed in black appeared, giving her a malicious look and uttering whispered words. The memory dissipated as quickly as it came, leaving Elisa dazed and confused. The prince, noticing her confusion, explained in a soft, melodious voice, "I was the victim of a terrible curse, cast by a jealous witch, doomed to live as a frog until a princess of her own free will took me in and showed compassion." With gratitude in his eyes, the prince began to tell his story. He spoke of his distant kingdom, a place of beauty and prosperity, ruled by his father, a just and beloved king. He described his life before the spell, the happy days he spent studying, hunting, and royal duties, surrounded by loyal friends and a loving family. The witch, envious of his happiness and beauty, cast the cruel curse, transforming him into a disgusting toad, banishing him far from her kingdom, with the only hope of breaking the spell through the act of kindness of a pure soul. The curse, he explained, could only be undone with the love and compassion of a princess who, even in the face of repulsion, accepted me into her life, fulfilling the promise made. Elisa, upon hearing it, understood the meaning of her terrible experience. By keeping his word, despite the displeasure and discomfort, he had shown the compassion necessary to break the spell. The prince looked at her with tenderness and respect. "Princess Elisa," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, "not only did you free me from the curse, but you also captured my heart with your kindness and courage. I will be eternally grateful." In his eyes, Elisa saw more than gratitude. I saw a genuine and deep love. Still under the impact of the revelation and the prince's beauty, Elisa heard the words that would change her destiny. Kneeling before her, with a sincere and passionate look, the prince made the request. "Princess Elisa, my liberator, my savior, do you want to become my wife and queen of my kingdom?" The request took her by surprise. Marriage, with a prince recently transformed into a frog. A whirlwind of thoughts invaded his mind. There was hesitation, of course, at the strangeness of the situation, but also an undeniable attraction to the kindness and courage emanating from the prince. In the few days they were together, even in frog form, he had noticed traces of nobility and kindness in his gestures and in his eyes. Looking into the prince's sincere blue eyes, Elisa saw the promise of a happy and loving future. A radiant smile lit up his face as he uttered the answer that would seal his fate. "Yes, Prince, I accept." A collective sigh of relief and joy seemed to echo throughout the castle. The news of the breaking of the spell and the marriage proposal spread like lightning, transforming the atmosphere from apprehension to celebration. The halls were filled with laughter and happy exclamations. The servants, courtiers, and the king himself rejoiced at the end of the curse and the future royal bond. The castle, once the scene of a strange experience, was now preparing to celebrate a fairy tale wedding, which would usher in a new era of joy and prosperity. Itinerary: the Frog Prince. With the wedding scheduled and preparations in full swing, it was time to say goodbye. Tears and smiles mixed in the castle courtyard as Princess Elisa prepared to leave. Her parents, the king and queen, hugged her tightly, expressing their joy for their daughter's happiness, but also their sadness at the separation. The queen gave Elisa a pearl necklace, a symbol of protection and good luck, while the king, with a broken voice, advised her to govern with wisdom and justice, reminding her of the values of her native kingdom. Elisa promised to honor his teachings and keep her family's memory alive in their new home. A golden royal carriage, shining in the morning sun, waited. Snow-white horses, adorned with bright feathers and harnesses, were impatient, ready to set out on the journey. Beside the carriage, Heinrich, the prince's loyal servant, bowed in respect and welcome. His face radiated satisfaction, eager to lead the future queen to his lord's kingdom. With a final greeting to her family, Elisa climbed into the carriage. The journey began, taking her away from the family castle towards an uncertain but promising future. The landscape unfolding before his eyes was impressive. Majestic mountains, green valleys, winding rivers, and dense forests painted a picture of lush natural beauty. Elisa contemplated every detail, imagining what her life would be like in the prince's kingdom. He dreamed of happy days with his beloved, exploring unknown lands and building a prosperous and just kingdom. At every turn in the road, anticipation grew, fueling hope for a new life full of love and adventure. Heinrich, during the trip, shared stories of the kingdom, describing the beauty of the castles, the kindness of the people, and the wisdom of the prince, further increasing Elisa's anxiety and joy. The arrival to the kingdom was triumphant. A festive crowd eagerly awaited the future queen, waving and shouting cheers as the royal carriage slowly passed through streets adorned with flowers and banners. The royal castle, imposing and majestic, rose on the horizon, bathed in the golden light of the afternoon, a true fairy tale setting. Elisa felt her heart flutter with excitement at being received with so much enthusiasm and affection. The next day, the royal wedding was celebrated with pomp and splendor. The cathedral was richly decorated with white and gold flowers, and the light of flickering candles illuminated the festive atmosphere. The soft music of harps and violins filled the space, creating a magical and exciting atmosphere. Elisa, dressed in a spectacular white dress embroidered with pearls, walked down the aisle to meet the prince, who was waiting for her at the altar with a radiant smile. As they exchanged vows of eternal love, their voices echoed throughout the cathedral, sealing their union before God and the kingdom. The prince, in an emotional speech, expressed his gratitude to the princess for breaking the curse and for giving him a second chance to love and be loved. He declared his eternal love and promised to rule at her side with wisdom and justice. Tears of joy ran down the faces of those present as the newlyweds kissed, sealing their commitment with pure and true love. The entire kingdom celebrated the union, with banquets, dances, and festivities that lasted for days, marking the beginning of a happy and prosperous reign. And so, the princess and prince lived happily ever after. They ruled the kingdom with wisdom and love, always remembering the lessons learned during the ordeal of the spell. Elisa never forgot the importance of seeing beyond appearances, valuing inner beauty and kindness above all. The prince, in turn, learned the importance of compassion and gratitude, reciprocating the love and loyalty of his people with justice and generosity. Together, they transformed the kingdom into an even more prosperous and happy place, where the magic of transformation was celebrated, and kindness was the highest law. The story of the Frog Prince has become a legend, passed down from generation to generation, reminding everyone that true beauty is in the heart, and that compassion has the power to overcome any obstacle, breaking even the cruelest spells. And for you who have followed this story, here is the message. Believe in the magic of transformation. Go beyond appearances, and never forget the power of kindness. Always remember, true beauty is in the heart, and compassion can break any spell. Thanks for watching our story. Share this message of hope and love with your loved ones. Peace reigned in the kingdom, and happiness flourished in the hearts of its inhabitants under the wise and loving government of the prince and princess. The days were filled with prosperity and joy, but like the calm before the storm, a murmur began to disturb the tranquility. Disturbing news, whispered by merchants and travelers, reached the listening ears of royalty. There was talk of a neighboring kingdom, beyond the rugged mountains, ruled by an ambitious and jealous king, known for his thirst for power and cruelty. King Oberon, as he was called, coveted the fertile lands and riches of the prince and princess's kingdom. Rumors intensified, painting a grim picture of war preparations and inflammatory speeches. Intercepted messages revealed plans for invasion and conquest, casting a shadow of apprehension over the once sunny kingdom. The prince and princess, once immersed in the harmonious routine of their reign, felt a chill run down their spines as they realized the growing threat. The carefreeness of the first days of marriage gave way to a worrying seriousness. They spent sleepless nights studying maps and reports, trying to understand the magnitude of the danger and devise a strategy to protect their people. The shadow of war loomed on the horizon, testing the strength and unity of the newly formed kingdom. Tranquility was giving way to uncertainty, and the future, previously so promising, was now tinged with threatening tones. The urgency of the situation required immediate measures. The prince and princess convened a royal council that brought together the nobles, military leaders, and wise men of the kingdom. The atmosphere in the council room was thick, charged with tension and expectation. The prince, in a firm and determined voice, explained the seriousness of the threat, detailing the information gathered and King Oberon's plans. The princess, at her side, completed the presentation by highlighting the importance of unity and courage to face the imminent challenge. While the council deliberated, a royal messenger burst into the room carrying a scroll sealed with King Oberon's coat of arms. With trembling hands, the prince opened the message and read it aloud for all to hear. The words were harsh and incisive. King Oberon demanded an exorbitant tribute, a humiliating submission, under threat of war and destruction. A murmur of indignation ran through the council. The proposal was scandalous, an insult to the sovereignty and honor of the kingdom. The prince and princess exchanged meaningful glances, silently communicating amidst the commotion. With wisdom and caution, they calmed the heated spirits, asking for serenity and strategy. Amid the clamor for revenge, the princess raised her voice, reminding everyone that the strength of a kingdom lies not only in its weapons, but also in the intelligence, diplomacy, and unity of its people. A plan began to take shape, a plan that would test not only military strength, but also the cunning and courage of its leaders. Instead of an immediate declaration of war, the cunning and calculating King Oberon proposed a challenge. An arrogant message arrived at the castle, demanding not gold or land, but something much more personal: the princess herself. Oberon, mocking the story of the Frog Prince, issued a challenge to Princess Elisa, doubting her inner beauty and her ability to truly love. He proposed a test, an enigma to be deciphered, stating that if the princess failed, the kingdom would surrender without a fight, and she would become its hostage. Otherwise, he would withdraw his threats and recognize the kingdom's sovereignty. The proposal was scandalous, but it also offered an opportunity to avoid bloodshed. The royal council was divided. Some called for an immediate war. Others were hesitant about the risk. The princess, with courage and determination, took the initiative. She would accept the challenge, not out of fear, but out of the conviction that love and wisdom can overcome brute force. The prince, restless, supported his wife's decision, trusting in her intelligence and purity of heart. King Oberon's riddle was complex and treacherous, testing the essence of true love and transformation. The princess, with the prince at her side, prepared to face the challenge, knowing that the fate of the kingdom and the proof of her love depended on success in that crucial test. The magic of transformation, which had brought them together, would be put to the test again, this time to save the kingdom and reaffirm the strength of true love.